So hello, everybody, and welcome to our third Impact Investing with Colleaga session. I'm Katie McNeil, community facilitator and host of today's session. For those of you who aren't familiar with our work, at Colleaga, we believe in the power of social entrepreneurs to solve the world's greatest challenges. So we build impact collaboratories to give mission-driven entrepreneurs, nonprofits, impact investors the tools, resources, and funds that they need to build impact ventures. So it's so great to see so many of our entrepreneurs and innovators joining this session today. A big welcome to everybody who's been helping us work on ventures of mental health, digital health, homelessness, and food security. And of course, a big welcome to everybody who is joining us on the call today. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So the session today is going to be about an hour, and it's going to be about emerging opportunities in social finance. So we'll learn about new waves of investment in social purpose organizations and how intentional investors can drive purpose and profit. We'll then hear from our special guest today, and everybody join me in giving a big welcome to Victor Beausoleil, Executive Director of SETSI, and one of Canada's foremost leaders in social finance. And he'll be speaking about opportunities for impact investors in a just transition in Canada. We'll then end off with a brief overview of our impact investing program and how it can help you invest in the social organizations that are most meaningful to you. Following the session from 5 p.m. onwards, we'll open up breakout rooms for a little mingle session. So it's where you can meet the other participants on the call and get any questions that you might have about our impact investing program answered. Colleaga is all about connection and collaboration. So we do ask that everyone leaves on their videos throughout the session. Just remember to leave yourselves on mute, and that's just to reduce any background noise. If you have any if you have any questions at all during our session today, you can reach out to me or Hugh Evans, our engagement lead, down in the Zoom chat. And following our session, if you are curious to find out more about Colleaga's work, I would encourage you all to check out our health and social innovation community. This is actually where you will come to take the courses that we offer as a part of the program, the Impact Investing Program, and it's where you can come to find updates of our projects and updates of what's going on in the world of impact. So Hugh shared a link to this community in the chat. I encourage everyone to check it out later on. So with all of that being said, I'll now introduce you to Dr. Dan Gordon, Board Chair of Colleaga and the lead of our Impact Investing Program. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Katie, and hello everyone. It's fantastic to see so many old friends and new faces. I can see people here, certainly from all over Canada and from the US, but also I can see Israel. We have a good African contingent, and I can see actually Ryan from New Zealand. So welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us from all over the world. This is the third call for members who are interested in joining our Impact Investing Program in the first quarter of 2022. The Colleaga believes in the power of social entrepreneurs to collectively build companies that solve social and environmental problems, big and small. We're the social innovators who see an injustice and think there's got to be a better way. We are the entrepreneurial outlaws who don't accept the status quo. The social entrepreneurs who see a wicked problem as an incredible opportunity to act. And we're the impact investors who are driven by this idea that we can do well by doing good. And animated by this belief, Colleaga Impact Collaborators go out and find the very best of early stage businesses. We mentor them, we help them find customers, we refine their business models, we help them tell their stories, and then together with you, we invest in them. And we're not alone. Colleaga Impact Collaborators are part of a worldwide movement for change. We are linked into a global network of cooperative mission-based innovation programs and venture studios that bring together public, academic, and industrial innovators to collaborate on complex social and environmental problems. We have a global vision to improve the lives of 1 billion people, and with our network of partners and collaborators in North America, in Asia, and in Africa, we are well on our way. And although our impact thinking is global, our collaboratories and our ventures are very local. In our essence, we do only two things. We bring together the change makers, and we ignite actionable funded collaborations. Impact Investing with Colleaga is our immersive experiential learning program, bringing together impact investors with entrepreneurs looking to finance their ventures. And today, we are going to talk more about how that happens. In our last session, we talked about developing a personal impact investing thesis. That is, coming to grips with the factors that are most important for us personally when we make a decision to invest in a project. We talked about impact investing as a matrix, with a vertical financial dimension and a horizontal impact dimension. One basic way of understanding our personal impact investing thesis is to locate an opportunity on this matrix and work out how it creates a blend of impact value and financial returns. So in the top right-hand corner, we're looking at high impact, high return opportunities. And moving down from there, we can choose opportunities that are high impact but offer less returns. Or if we move left, we are looking at opportunities that are less impactful but offer higher or perhaps more risks-free, more guaranteed returns. Colleaga tries to play in the top left and top right of the matrix. That is, with companies and ventures at the start of their journey. We make catalytic investments in social impact startups that are on the cutting edge of new ideas, using technologies to do things in entirely new ways. This is the domain of the entrepreneurial outlaws, who decide that they are compelled to work towards change. These are the entrepreneurs who are asking us to care about people, about planet, and to believe in their vision and in their ability to execute on their plans. Now, within this domain, we all have different considerations about the additional dimensions that are important to us when we decide where we will invest and what kind of difference we want to make. For some of us, founder diversity is important. For others, where the company geography is located is a critical factor. Some of us focus on impact in a particular place. Some of us choose a theme, one of the SDG themes, like homelessness or poverty or water or food. And some of us are technology focused and will only invest in technology-enabled ventures. Impact Investing with Colleaga, the program, is all about an active learning and learning through experience. So let's start that journey now. And let's do a few polls to understand who we are and see our personal impact investing thesis in action. First, let's get a sense of different levels of experience. Katie, please put up the first poll. And everyone on the line, please choose one of these options. Actually, choose more than one option. It's a multiple choice. Tell us, are you an experienced angel investor and you've done multiple investments? Have you made at least one angel investment before? Are you perhaps not an investor, but an entrepreneur looking for investment? And as an investor, do you take impact considerations into account? Or lastly, do you only consider financial returns in your investment decisions, whether those are ones you take personally or through a financial advisor? So please choose the options that make sense to you and press the submit button. And Katie, when we have, let's give everybody another 2 or 3 minutes. Can you show us what the results are, please? So this is who we are on the call today. There are about 50 of us so far on the call. A number of us said we're experienced. We know we've been around the block. We know about we are angel investors. We've done this before. But look, a lot of us have said, oh, we've done this at least once before. That's a good number of people on this call who already have been through the experience of saying, I want to invest in a new idea, and I've actually done that. I think we are self-selecting. 2/3 of us said, yes, we do take impact investing, impact considerations into account. And very few of us have said we only consider financial returns and risk in our investment decisions. Although perhaps if we restated that question, I think all of us would say financial returns are extremely important to us, and we all want to invest in good investment opportunities that will return our capital to us with a great return on investment. But in addition, we also want to look at impact considerations. So when we now let's look at what those impact considerations might be. So here's the second question. Again, can you please put up the poll and choose one or two or perhaps three of the factors that are most important to you? These all might be important, but choose the ones that really speak to you. So are you interested in always ensuring that you see a diverse founder team? Is it about company geography? Do you only invest in companies that are within 100 miles of where you live? Do you want to see impact in where you live? So wherever the company is, you want a project that is creating impact. Do you look at the SDG themes and say, I only do water, or I only do agriculture, or another theme? And are you a technology investor? Please, again, choose what's important to you. And then, Katie, if you put the results up in a moment, let's take a look at who we have again on the call. And this, everybody, is the start of how to think about your impact, your personal impact investing thesis. And amazing, very few of us said company geography is important. That's a real sea change, and it's one that has been a result of COVID and Zoom meetings like this, where even 3 or 4 years ago, if you didn't live within a kilometer of Sand Hill Road, you weren't getting Silicon Valley investment. Investors at other cities would say, well, I need to be able to drive to where your office is in order to be able to invest in you. And that has really changed over the last couple of years now that Zoom and remote meetings are so ubiquitous. About half of us have chosen place-based impact. Many of us have latched onto the SDG themes. It would be interesting to know which themes are important to us. But it does point out that not every investment is right for every person, and it's not about what a typical angel investor might say, which is, I don't care about what the domain is as long as I believe in the business model. A lot of us do care about the particular thing we're going to focus on. We all want financial returns. A good number of us on the call are about technology and understand the enabling power of technology and how that creates scale. So this is what a typical group, impact investing group, can look like. We all come with our different ideas of what's important, and part of this program is to be able to articulate what's really important to us and to talk to our group and see what's important to them. And from that, we can learn about how different people see the world. And we can learn to recognize different opportunities that perhaps our biases may not have allowed us to see. I'd also now like to focus quite a bit more on founder diversity. The fact that over half of us said that founder diversity is important makes us definitely above average, which makes sense for people on this call. But seriously, looking at founder diversity is important. Intentional investing in a diverse founding team is a choice that we can make. It's a lever that we have not only to create great companies that have got diverse opinions at the executive table, but it's also a lever to help underrepresented entrepreneurs create wealth for themselves and often for their under-resourced communities. Our data today shows that we are more aware of this than many others. The data for the industry is that when it comes to women entrepreneurs, less than 20% of capital goes to startups with at least one female founder, and less than 2% of venture capital goes to startups with a BIPOC founder. That is in 2021. That is the evidence for systemic marginalization. If you have a great education, and a fantastic idea and a great team, and you're a woman or a person of color, you cannot get funded. That is the reality. And that means that you can't pursue your idea and you can't generate wealth for yourself, for your community, or for your family. And that actually hurts us all, because overall wealth generation and overall GDP is a function of the number of startups that are in an ecosystem. So encouraging more underrepresented entrepreneurs to start more companies is a good thing for us all to do. And as a matter of interest, Canada is way behind other comparable OECD countries. We're at about 8% of founders of gender or color differences. And the number of entrepreneurial startups in the ecosystem. Other companies like Hungary or Poland or Korea are double that number of new businesses. So this kind of inequity in wealth creation opportunities is what social finance is all about. Governments and organizations all over the world are implementing a wide variety of programs and policies to change this, but much of it is not well known. So let's get a sense now again of how much we know about Canadian social finance and BIPOC impact investing programs. Can you put up the last poll, please? And give us a sense, please. For the people on the call, how aware are you of impact investing models specifically designed for Black and Indigenous communities? Capacity building financial intermediaries? Do you know more than 10 Black fund managers in Canada? Are you familiar with the Canadian Investment Readiness Program or the almost $1 billion Canadian Social Finance Fund? Katie, when we have enough results, and we've got at least, it's fantastic, we have at least 60 people on the call. Sure, that is amazing. So for all of us, look, 2/3 of us said that we know of impact investing models designed for BIPOC and Indigenous communities. And a lot of us are looking at the financial intermediaries and the capacity building organizations who are working in BIPOC communities. Very few of us know more than 10 Black fund managers in Canada, which also is not surprising because only about 3% of venture capital fund managers are people of color. It is a vastly underrepresented industry. And a lot of us on the call know about the Canadian Impact Readiness Program and the Social Finance Fund. So we can see from our data that a lot of us are becoming much more aware that these kind of things are happening. And it's an important area of knowledge if we want to support the entrepreneurs who best represent values that are most meaningful to each of us. Our personal impact investing thesis is really our way of being intentional about deciding what is important to us. And knowledge of these kind of programs means that we can be effective advocates for change. And it also means that we know where the programs are that are creating new wealth and new impact generating opportunities. And so that is why we have invited our guest speaker today. It gives me tremendously great pleasure to introduce you to Victor Beausoleil. Victor grew up watching his mother work as a susu banker and seeing the power that access to capital can have. Over 2 decades in Canada as a social entrepreneur pursuing youth justice and equity for communities, as a board member of the Canadian Community Economic Development Network and a board member on the Atkinson Foundation, among other positions, Victor has garnered a wealth of experience about the dynamics of wealth in Canada. Victor has been a terrific partner to Colleaga as we have set up the African Canadian Impact Collaboratory. And Colleagues are proud to be a sponsor of the Social Economy through Social Inclusion study on impact investing done by SETSI, which is designed to accelerate inclusive and equitable growth in impact investing in Canada. So joining us from Ghana today, my friend and my brother, Victor.
Greetings, folks. I hope all is well with you and your families. Thank you so much, Dan, for all the intellectual property that you shared with us and your brilliance. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So as we begin all things with SETSI, I'd like to begin this capacity building session by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. I also acknowledge my ancestors, any ancestors who were kidnapped and subsequently enslaved. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation, those killed by police brutality and other forms of racism. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So one of my favorite proverbs, it's a Yoruba proverb, is a coin hoarded is a blessing missed. And when I think of Dan speaking specifically around my mother being a susu banker, my mother worked for the Ontario Insurance Commission for about 4 decades, for almost 40 years. It's now called FSCO, the Financial Service Commission of Ontario. But I watched her as a susu banker help many of her peers, her friends, her sisters purchase their first homes, the down payment for their first homes, their first vehicles, through this model of cooperative economics that we've used since time immemorial as peoples of African descent. I want to do some context setting in this session. So I'm from East Toronto, Scarborough, born and raised. I'm 38 years old, a husband and father of 4. I've lost 34 of my friends due to gun violence, and I grew up in Canada, which is ridiculous. My most recent friend, Samuel Abwache, God rest his soul, was murdered September 7th of this year. Remarkable social purpose organizer in the Jane Finch community, going to visit his mother. That's the context on my background. That's a little outside of my bio, and my bio is accessible online if you wanted to dive deeper into terms of my validation or accreditation for this conversation. In terms of context setting around social finance and impact investing, I want to look at 3 specific meetings in history. The first being the Berlin Conference. So the Berlin Conference sought to discuss the partitioning of Africa, establishing rules to amicably divide resources amongst Western countries at the expense of African people. Of these 14 nations at the Berlin Conference, France, Germany, Great Britain, and Portugal were the major players. What happened as a result? Africa was carved up. Why is that important right now in 2021? Because everyone that's on this screen right now, that's listening to me, hearing me, has a battery in their laptop. And that battery, the essential feature in that battery is cobalt. And cobalt, 70% of the world's cobalt comes from young children mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the Berlin Conference was a meeting that to this day has impacts not just on peoples of African descent globally, but on all the iterations of imperialism and capitalism that impact folks with darker hues and darker pigmentation across the planet. The next meeting that I want to look at is the Bretton Woods Conference, affectionately known as the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. It was a gathering of delegates from 44 nations that met from July 1st to the 22nd of 1944 in Bretton Woods. The reason why this is important is because all our currency globally is fiat currency. It's backed by no gold. So it's backed by the idea, the concept that the resources have value. Why is this important? Because once again, just like the Bretton Woods Conference, it was an incestuous stratified group of a few individuals from a very specific gender and a very specific race. And the last meeting I want to make mention to just happened last year, COP26. And if you look at this picture, you see how many suits and ties there are, and you see very few women. The reason why I bring up these 3 meetings is because when you look at social finance and impact investing, you have to look at it from a perspective of a social, gender, and racial equity lens. And throughout history, consistently, we found that models and frameworks that have hurt society, hurt the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profits, were built by incestuous groups. More context setting. The world's 10 richest men have doubled their fortunes during the pandemic. There's no moral or political justification for such extreme inequality. So that's something that I really want you to think about. In its annual inequality report, Oxfam once again highlighted this obscene inequity tearing at our societies and holding back progress on gender equality, climate, race, poverty, and other challenges such as AIDS and the COVID pandemic. Another context setting, new figures from the People's Vaccine Alliance reveal that companies behind the two most successful COVID-19 vaccines, Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna, are making a combined profit of $65,000 per minute. Do the math on that. I guarantee you do not have a calculator that can do that math. $65,000 times 60 times 24 hours in a day times 365 days in a year. The last piece of context setting. There's currently 2,755 billionaires on the planet today, with a total wealth value of 13.1 trillion. And there are recently 493 members that joined that club. When you think of capitalism and the work of Adam Smith in 1776, that literally built out all the iterations of capitalism that we right now hold near and dear, Adam Smith's version of capitalism was not what we have today. And the reason for that is most folks read The Wealth of Nations, but they never read his other book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. His premise and his investment thesis and his model or economic thesis was predicated on the fact that capitalism only works if there's morals and if there's ethics and if there's levers and mechanisms to keep folks in check. And a lot of folks are familiar with Adam Smith's works, but if I did a poll right now and asked how many people are familiar with Dr. Carolyn Chinez Hussein, and the brilliant work that she's done over the past decade, maybe two, maybe three. I don't want to date our elders' age. Many folks may not be familiar with her work, but I tell you to lean in. Many folks may not be familiar with our elder, Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard. Once again, an incredible scholar and elder who has really broken down what cooperative economics and what the sharing and mutual aid economy can leverage to develop community economic development and subsequently social finance and impact investing frameworks that are equitable. So one of my favorite quotes is, if you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Let me say that again. If you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. The reason why I bring this up is because it's very important to recognize that regardless of where you live, your gender, your race, your orientation, we live on one planet. And while many folks believe that they're doing better off because everyone has YouTube, a flat screen, a microwave in their home, and access to some resources, the fact remains that there is a ridiculous amount of people, and I don't want to pull up the stat because that's ridiculous, that are living on less than $1.30 a day on the planet. So when you think of impact investing, I want you to think of it from an agricultural perspective, primarily because my wife is a lot smarter than me, and she's a horticulturalist by trade. She was a sociologist. Got her degree in sociology, but pivoted quickly to agricultural development because she likes nature more than people, I believe. So when you think of a root system, a lot of times folks believe that there's almost like a glass ceiling. And Dan alluded to this. He mentioned that only 20% of women-led funds get access to resources, and less than 2% of BIPOC organizations get access to funding. It's not a glass ceiling, it's a hard pan. A lot of folks aren't familiar with the term hard pan, but let me explain to you. So in agricultural development, hard pan is basically when there is toxins in the soil, plastics in the soil, and when basically you go 10 to 12, sometimes 15 feet down, and the soil becomes very dense and compressed based off of toxicity. And the root systems can't penetrate that soil. And that is one of the challenges that we have right now in the social finance ecosystem and the impact investing ecosystem internationally, not just in Canada. And I'll give much more context. So what is social innovation? Social innovation is about developing new solutions, social, environmental, economic challenges. It can improve people's quality of life through collaborating with new partners, testing creative ideas, and measuring their impact. I don't want to go too deep into social innovation. You can take a shot of the screen because I have limited time. What is social finance? Social finance is a tool that seeks to mobilize private capital for the public good. In our poll, I noticed only 58% of folks were familiar with the Social Finance Fund, which kind of gives me some context around how I have to set the landscaping up of this conversation. Social finance creates opportunities for investors to finance projects that benefit society and for community organizations to access new sources of funds. Social finance investments involve access to capital that has a positive impact, not only financially, but also on society as a whole, and can be made by different types of investors. These include charitable foundations, retail investors, credit unions, chartered banks, governments, institutional investors, such as pension funds. And I really want to highlight pension funds because a lot of folks aren't looking at them. There are jurisdictions across the planet right now where you as a citizen can actually direct how your pension fund dollars are invested. The pension funds globally are the stewards of the wealth of the 99%, but we don't lean in and press them enough. Social finance can be made through a variety of organizations that seek to have a positive impact on their communities. These include registered charities, nonprofit organizations, cooperatives, and businesses that consider social effects of their activities. I want to flag cooperatives as well. So if you look at the co-op ecosystem across Canada, the best example is in Quebec for a variety of reasons, primarily because the Quebec government gets it. And because the demand side, those folks that were operating co-ops really lobbied and pressed and put a lot of resources into government relations. But if you go back to the federal budget that came out in April, the word co-op wasn't used once in that 700-page document. The co-ops ecosystem, just like the social finance impact investing ecosystem, is a sector. The co-op ecosystem employs 200,000 people plus in Canada. It's 3 to 4% of the GDP, and it was not even mentioned in the federal budget. So once again, when you look at nascent ecosystems like the impact investing ecosystem and the social finance ecosystem, a lot of work needs to be done specifically around capacity building. I'm going to fly through because we don't have much time. The social finance market brings together 3 types of actors. The demand side actors seeking investments. So these are charities and nonprofits, cooperatives and mutuals, private businesses advancing a social or environmental mission, such as social enterprises, or what we now, a term that we use more often now is SPOs, social purpose organizations. The supply side is seeking to create social impact, or investors such as foundations, institutional investors such as pension funds, retail investors seeking to create social and environmental impact through their savings. And last but not least, intermediaries who connect demand with supply. These are financial intermediaries such as community loan funds, credit unions, Aboriginal financial solutions, and chartered banks. I want to stop there for a second to give some greater context. A lot of this would be impossible without civil rights leaders in the United States. In 1977, the Community Investment Act was enacted, and that created CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, and we can get to that later. The reason why it's important to frame right now in terms of intermediaries is because there's currently almost 60 AFIs, Aboriginal Financial Institutions in Canada. There's a wealth of social finance and social economy movement and activity in Quebec for the past 2 decades. A $20 million investment by Paul Martin created $600 million of economic activity. And if you look at the work of my colleague Beatrice Niamson at Chantier, or Philip Garant at Cap Finance, or the work of Nancy Niepson or Risk, you'll recognize the brilliance of their framework and their model. It was about geography, it was about language. Francophone speaking Canadians need to be able to see them as economic actors. If we flash forward and look at rural communities and their role in impact investing, loan funds, and social finance and community finance, there's over 260 community futures associations across the country. There's not one Black credit union. Think about that. And it was civil rights leaders that helped enact the Community Investment Act in the United States. There's actually a Black CDFI network in the United States. In terms of the landscape, and this comes to the source of this document right here is my colleague Adam Spence at SVX. So this is the social finance and impact investing landscape in Canada. And it's really straightforward. You have the Ottawa Community Foundation doing great work, Marco Bacani, the Inspirit Foundation. This is a foundation that transitioned 100% of their endowment into impact investing. That's Sadia Zaman, the McConnell Foundation, Liliana, Van City, JN was the Rally Assets, UPCAR. It was formerly called Purpose Capital. God rest our brother Norm Taziski, he passed away 2 weeks ago. He founded Purpose Capital, sold it, and it became Rally Assets, SVX, the list goes on. You can screenshot that if you want some greater context on some of the remarkable work being done by some of these players in the landscape and the ecosystem. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, I pointed at the stars, but all they could see was the tips of my fingers. The reason why I bring this quote up right now is to go back to this deck right here. There is only 2 indigenous organizations that were founded by indigenous leaders on this list, and a few others. And there's not one African Canadian or other racialized group leading in this work. That's very troublesome and very problematic for a whole bunch of reasons. For the same reason why I brought up the co-op ecosystem. When ecosystems are not diverse and not equitable, they are not relevant to the federal, provincial, municipal government, and they actually aren't relevant to constituents, not just in the margins of the periphery of the economy, but in the center of the economy. So once again, I pointed at the stars, but all they could see was the tips of my fingers. So currently, in terms of the social finance fund, which about 52% of you said you were familiar with, I'm going to give some context because as Canadians, it's almost $1 billion of our tax dollars. The first minister over the file was MP Duclos. The second minister up until October was Minister Ahmed Hussein from York Southwestern. And the current minister is MP Karina Gould, brilliant colleague, very young. I believe she's 34 years old, one of the youngest MPs in the country from Burlington. What's important to recognize is this file, almost $1 billion, had 3 MPs over the past 2 years. In terms of social innovation and social finance strategy, very straightforward. $50 million for the investment readiness program, which has been renewed, and $755 million for the social finance fund. The premise of the social finance fund is to identify a wholesaler, and the wholesaler RFP went out on September 29th of 2021, and right now they're going through the process of identifying the wholesaler. Once the wholesaler is identified, the wholesaler will deploy catalytic capital to intermediaries. These intermediaries will deploy capital to social purpose organizations. I just went over this, so we're going to fly through this slide. The Social Finance Fund will provide repayable funds to a small number of investment managers known as wholesalers. The Social Finance Fund will also provide a smaller portion of non-repayable funds for activities that support the wholesaler's use of repayable funds and the Social Finance Fund goals. The social finance intermediaries will invest in a range of diverse SPOs. The diversity ranges from women, indigenous people, folks that are from or below the LICO, the low-income cutoff, Black Canadians and racialized people, peoples with disabilities, members of the LGBTQ² community, official language minorities, and recent immigrants and refugees and newcomers. I'm not going to go through this entire slide based off the amount of time we have, but what's really important to recognize is the fact that when you look at the social finance fund and the almost $1 billion that's being deployed, a social, racial, and gender equity lens is imperative for the reasons I mentioned before. This is a small slide that's this is directly from ESDC, and you can screenshot this if you want. And this will help you understand how the resources will flow. So the resources will flow from our remarkable colleagues at ESDC to the wholesaler, but also with the caveat that this amount of capital will attract private investors. And those dollars coupled will trickle down through a wholesaler to the intermediaries and subsequently to SPOs. SPOs, once again, stands for Social Purpose Organization. In terms of the criteria for the wholesaler, is really straightforward. Legal status, type of business, business documents, audited financials, letter of attestation, and the high-level budget proposal. Very simple. So in terms of giving you some more context on the landscape, in Canada, the impact investing community has 2 large bodies. The domestic side is called the TIP table, the Table of Impact Investment Practitioners. The TIP table is a vibrant and diverse pan-Canadian community that brings together the expertise and energy of Canada's experienced and emerging social finance fund managers to expand the social purpose marketplace. So the TIP table, Table of Impact Investment Practitioners, is all things domestic. The CAFID table is different. The CAFID table, the Canadian Forum for Impact Investments and Development, is a Canadian community of individuals, organizations, and investors working in developing countries who treat social and environmental impact and financial return as coexisting priorities. So TIP, run by our remarkable colleague, Lauren Dobell, is all things domestic in Canada, impact investing, social finance, and CAFID, run by Lindsay Wallace, is all things international. Both of these bodies recently partnered with what they call the godfather of impact investing, Sir Ronald Cohen, I would go further back to Mansa Musa in terms of philanthropy, just because he lived a lot. He started models like this a lot earlier. But the Global Steering Group has done some remarkable work over the past, I'd say, 2 decades. The Global Steering Group is an international body, and recently the Tip Table and CAFID have joined forces under the GSG to develop something called the NAB, the National Advisory Board, that is still very nascent. But once again, it speaks to that model of international collaborations to attack very pervasive problems using capital. 75% of retail investors would like their financial service provider to inform them about responsible investments that are aligned with their values. This is a 2020 survey done by RIA. A commonly held view is that a return sacrifice is needed when adopting sustainable investing. We disagree. And the fact that the opposite is true. That's stated by BlackRock. And Larry Fink actually just, so this is old. Larry Fink, the CEO of the world's largest wealth management firm, sent his 2019 letter of CEOs, and he positioned social purpose to the forefront of business strategy. The SI, social innovation, and social finance model has been central to dialogues in these strategies, responsibilities, and priorities. Larry Fink actually just put out a new letter just yesterday. If you have time, read it, it's interesting. So I'm gonna throw out there something that's really important. Sometimes when you're invited, you're still not welcome. And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of times, many fund managers, and less than 8% of the folks on this call, and there's quite a few of us here, could name more than 10 Black fund managers in Canada. The fact remains that racialized communities, women, and a plethora of other vulnerable distinct groups are sometimes invited but are not welcome to these ecosystems. That has to change. In terms of building a culture of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access and belonging within the social innovation, social finance ecosystem, it requires capacity building, foresight, and leadership. A lot of times that capacity building comes down to jargon and acronyms that folks just don't know. When I speak about social finance, community economic development, folks don't know the terms, the terminology. If I say CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, folks may not know the term. If I say CEDF, folks may not know the term. If I say CDF, folks may not know the term. And it's really important that we recognize the terminology. So quickly, we're going to go over some terms to help with your capacity. A community economic development investment fund is a pool of capital which is raised from individuals right now only in Canada, in Nova Scotia, to invest for for-profit entities with a defined community. These funds are controlled by a local group of officers and directors who may be chosen by the founders and the promoters of the CDF or CDF investors at an annual general meeting. To establish a CDF offering, the applicants must prepare and file the form. So basically, this is a model that came from the States, that was adopted in Nova Scotia, that has been successful, but from my understanding right now, from my colleague David Upton, it's actually on its decline. Community development financial institutions are private financial institutions that are 100% dedicated to delivering responsible, affordable lending to help low-income, low-wealth, and other disadvantaged groups and communities join the economic mainstream. So, after gaining insights on the current impact investing and social finance landscape, the question is, what role does imperialism, colonialism, conquest, stolen land, free labor in the current extractive models of capitalism truly have? And how can we amplify responsible, and let me say that again, responsible impact investing, social finance, community economic development, and community finance in Canada? So the last quote that I'm going to mention is solidarity is not an act of charity, but a mutual aid between forces fighting for the same objective. Once again, solidarity is not an act of charity, but a mutual aid between forces fighting for the same objective. Once again, thank you so much for your leadership and your brilliance, Dan, and your team. And that's it for me in terms of my presentation and deck. I'm definitely here available, and I hit it right on the mark in terms of the 45 mark. So I timed myself well. I appreciate your team.
Oh, sorry, Dan, I'll interrupt you. I think you're muted right now.
Let me just repeat that. Thank you, Victor, for not only for an incredibly enlightening and erudite presentation, but for everything that you have done and that you continue to do. It is amazing work. So I think what we've heard is a real call to action to amplify social investment. And what we've also heard is that there is a burgeoning social finance and impact investing landscape, and that is creating new opportunities and new ways of thinking about purpose and about money. Victor mentioned the co-op landscape. In fact, at the moment, we are looking at investing in two different co-ops. One that is building a high-tech advanced micro-farming network for urban hyperlocal food production. And the second one that's a technology co-op that is building opioid overdose detection systems. Both those are both great financial investment opportunities, but are doing incredible good and are making incredible impact. So impact investing with Colleaga is about this kind of education. And it's not only about education, it's about challenging myths that we are all told that we should believe. And many of those myths Victor has already alluded to earlier. For example, impact investing is too complicated. And it's for the acolytes who know what they're doing, but not for regular people. But no, impact investing is about making personal choices. And it's as simple as making a choice and writing a check. Secondly, another pervasive myth that we're all faced with is there's no place for values in investing. I think that is also not true, and Victor alluded to that point again. When Larry Fink from BlackRock says that the best ways that we all make money is to focus on social inclusion and social investing, you know that there are people there who understand that they will do best by doing good. I think another myth that we're all faced with is that this is all too big, it's too complicated, it's all too insoluble. And I think that impact investing is about understanding that the problems are big, but it comes down to individually us each taking action. And when we do, we can make a difference. Creating meaningful investor action is really the objective of our program. It's a journey of learning about our personal thesis and acting to use whatever amount of capital we have and we want to make available to make a tangible difference and get a return. And when we are the change that we would like to see, when we meaningfully engage in small action to improve others, we enhance our own lives. And that, I think, is the main point of one of Victor's commentaries. We are in this together, and it is because we all benefit, not because we are just there to help. So our Impact Investing with Colleaga program is an immersive learning experience where we build a cohort of emerging impact investors who share a passion about making the world a better place. And the program is designed to give you tools and resources that you need to actively investigate leading startups and how to confidently invest in social and environmental impact startups. And I think that confidence is a key word. These kind of startups at the best of times are hard to understand. When we look at them and we look at them together and we hear different perspectives and different opinions and we gain confidence and we do it in a fun way in a group, it makes a real difference to understanding that we can do this, and yes, it is going to work out. So the model that we have is every accredited investor participant in the program contributes $10,000, and we pool that into a single special purpose fund. As we actively learn about impact investing and financial analysis and due diligence, we're also getting connected into our global network of like-minded investors with access to more different and larger investment opportunities. At the end of the program, we use all of our learning to decide together which companies to invest in. And Colleaga then sets up the investment, sets up all the paperwork, we manage the investment, and when we exit, Colleaga returns the capital and the gains to all of the investors in that fund according to the number of units we each hold. So it's a fairly simple model, deliberately kept very simple. And for that reason, we cover all of our costs with a $5,000 fee, and that covers Colleaga membership for the next 3 years. It covers all of the program costs, it covers the legal costs, and it covers the costs of administering the investment over whatever period of time it takes to exit. We don't take any annual fees and we don't take any carry. So compared to a typical fund where there's a 2% annual fee and a 20% carry, this is a very efficient way of getting money to where it needs to go and to generate returns. Our paid program begins in March, and it's going to run for 10 weeks. Prior to the start date, we're going to have another 2 sessions like this to explore more topics in impact investing and connect investors who are going to be part of our cohort and connect entrepreneurs who are going to be presenting to them. We closed registrations in March, and we have a limited number of seats available that are already filling up. So please make sure to sign in if you want to secure a spot. Hugh has shared a registration link in the chat. Fill out the form, signal your interest, and we'll reach out to you with next steps. But hearing what Victor has said, what we've also understand is that our program pricing model of $10,000 and a $5,000 fee and searching out over 10 weeks for above average market return ROI investment opportunities works for high net worth accredited investors. But the investment size is a barrier for many others, as is the length of the program. And what we're interested in to do is to design different financial products with different time commitments and more inclusive pricing models. So as a learning organization, we'd like to ask you on the call today to help us co-create a different program and pricing model that will open up learning and capacity building to more people so we can expand the pool of knowledgeable impact investors. So here's one last poll, and we'd appreciate you participating in. Here are some different options. We've kept the top option. That is the one we'll be moving forward with in March. But we're also looking at different kinds of financial investment program products that might make sense for others. So would a program that is half the investment with fees built into the investment be a better deal for you or for others? Would you want it to be done over one day? That's what we've heard from some people. There's a day-long course where it's a single investment. We get together with a bunch of friends. We look at the investment, we make a decision, and then we have dinner. That could be a good model. We've seen there are several programs that look at a monthly investment. And the monthly investment could be anything from a few $100s a month down to a $20 investment fee. That's like okay, it's like an expense, it's a Netflix equation. Nobody's going to get rich from it, but it does provide some funding for others. Or it may be that none of these options work for you, or people on the call are not impact investors, and that is absolutely understandable. Could you please choose what works for you and choose one or more of these options, and let's see from the spread on this call what different financial products might look like. Great, thank you. I think the less time, less of a financial commitment and less time, or a monthly commitment look to be the choices that are right. And also acknowledging that look, about a third of people are not impact investors. And I think the real challenge ahead of us is to understand that we're all angel investors. What we're looking at are financial returns, and that perhaps calling it impact investment is a barrier in and of itself. Perhaps it should just be, this is about investing. So thank you very much. But what we should also end on is looking back at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These were published in 2012 in Rio. And 10 years later, this is still the world's to-do list. It is longer than it was in 2012. It is nowhere close to being achieved. We have ahead of us a huge, huge, huge task, especially with the climate change agenda ahead of us and what is completely interlinked to that is social inclusion. So impact investing with Colleaga, whether it is coming to many of our free programs like this, or joining our community, or participating in paid programs, is about asking important questions. Mark Carney's book about value or values really framed it well. What are the right questions that I should be asking? What does it mean to be an investor? What is the best way that I can contribute to factors that affect the entire world? And as we work through these questions and through these options, what we are finding out is that impact investing with Colleaga is not just about choosing where we want to do good, but we're a detector for the future. What we are seeing is whether we are looking at our ag tech and our IoT projects, or we are looking at digital health projects, or we are looking at affordable housing, what we are discovering, or of course our energy projects, we are discovering where the really smart and the big money is going to be made as trillions of dollars are pumped into climate change and social innovation money infuses into the capital markets. Impact investing with Colleaga is about illuminating the outlaws who are literally experimenting with new ways to transform the world. And by acting together, we become a catalyst in their story of a successful innovation, and an absolutely necessary element in generating transformative change. By supporting them with just little bits of capital, we are directly participating in truly changing the world for other people. Thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us throughout the program or at any other one of these sessions. Back to you, Katie.
Hi, thanks, Dan. So hi, everybody. I'll just go super quick because I'll get us wrapped up. Our next session is going to be on February 16th. It's going to be a mini pitch night, which will feature 2 of the ventures that we currently have in our program. Hugh's just shared a link to that in the chat, and I'll also share it in emails afterwards. Apologies for all of you who had to enter later on in the session. I will be releasing a recording of the full session if you want to check that out. I'll be following up with that tomorrow in email. And I'll be following up to all of you to find out what your impact goals are and how we can help you achieve them. If you are interested in joining the next program cohort, Hugh has just shared a link to register to that in the chat. Please fill that out, and then we'll follow up with you for next steps for getting involved. With that being said, we'll now open up some breakout rooms. We'll have 2 different ones. I'm not sure if Victor, it's getting late there, so I'm not sure if he'll be able to join, but if he is, he'll be in a room with Dan. They'll be discussing social finance and impact investing. So if you want to have a broader discussion about that, or if you have any questions about the program, please self-select into that room. Hugh and I will be in a separate breakout room for people who have any questions about joining the program as a venture or as a company. If you want to have a discussion about that, please self-select into Hugh and I's room, breakout room number 2. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Thanks so much to Victor for his fabulous words. And we'll hope we see you all in the future.